What's up, everyone? Welcome to my Stanley Cup playoff prediction video for the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I was going to do the entire playoffs. I contemplated it, but I don't feel like that'll be very productive since I would be predicting matchups that aren't aren't necessarily going to exist or be very accurate because of injuries and whatnot. So we're just gonna do the first round. We're gonna go from the left top and work down. I ripped this picture from the NHL Facebook page, so excuse if it's not super highest quality. It was pretty much made for kind of like mobile devices, I'm pretty sure. Um, but it was the most it was kind of the best picture that I had for this kind of a video to be structured. So the top left matchup is St. Louis and Minnesota. Now Minnesota's been one of the hottest teams in the NHL, while St. Louis has just had another solid all-around year. They had great production out of their top two lines, which is something they really didn't have last year, was depth scoring. And they have the best power play, I believe, in the NHL this year too. And great goaltending as usual from Brian Elliott. Brian Elliott's usually not great in the playoffs. Jake Allen is unexperienced, and their defensive core is very nice as usual. Their offense is better than ever. However, they are missing their, I'd say, best forward in Vladimir Tarasenko, and I think that's going to hurt. I don't know if he's back. I'm very unprepared, as you can tell. But I don't know if he's back. If he's back, that does kind of change the series. If not, and they have to play without him, it doesn't. But however, I don't think that. Oh no, he comes back soon. So I think that considering the circumstances, I think that St. Louis will win it. However, I don't think it'll be very easy. Minnesota's an excellent wild card team. I earlier this season thought that they were not even like a playoff team, and they've just proven themselves time and time again. I think Devin Dubnyk will be decent in the playoffs. I don't think he'll be anything great. He's never played in the playoffs, so there's that to consider too. But I'm gonna ultimately pick St. Louis to win this series in 7 games. However, I don't think they'll make it much further than that. So we got Chicago and Nashville. Chicago is an interesting team this year because usually they have a lot of the scoring punch. This year it was really not the case, as they missed Patrick Kane for most of the end of the year, and Patrick Sharp had one of the worst years of his career offensively. I'm going to say Nashville ekes this out in 6 games, just because Chicago's been a good team ever since Patrick Kane went down. I just don't think that they're going to have enough scoring in the playoffs unless Patrick Sharp really elevates his level of play, which I also don't see happening considering his age at this point, his speed. He's really slowed down as a skater. He was never an elite skater to really begin with, in my opinion, and he's kind of slowed down this year, which I think has kind of contributed to his overall decline in production. But I'm gonna pick. I have all the top seeds winning in the West. It's crazy. So in the you know what, I'll come back to the Nashville Chicago one. So Anaheim and Winnipeg. This was a really tough one to think about, but again, I'm going to take Winnipeg. A lot of I didn't have all the top seeds in the West. What the hell am I talking? I'm going to take Winnipeg. A lot of Anaheim. You look at Anaheim's stats, and they're not a very good team in terms of where they stand in goals against, goals for, power play, penalty kill. They're not a good team really in any of those categories. I don't think they're top 10 in any of those categories, and if they are, it's low top 10s. They have a really weird game-winning mindset, I guess, but I just don't think that any of their stats particularly translate well into the playoffs. And Winnipeg's a young, energetic team who's never been in a situation to play in the playoffs in their franchise history, really. They've only been to the playoffs once as the Atlanta Thrashers with Ilya Kovalchuk, and I believe Marian Hossa was on the team that year too, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And they just got swept in the playoffs, so they've never been in a position to play a meaningful playoff game in their franchise history, really. And this is a meaningful home playoff game, and I think they're going to pull it off this year. I think that they're going to beat Anaheim. It's going to be another 7-game series, but I'm not going to guarantee anything. I'm not going to guarantee any of these playoff series because this is one of the most competitive playoff years ever. Like it is like one of the toughest, like in terms of picking winners for each matchup. I had a very hard time. But overall, yeah, back to the series. I think Winnipeg is going to take it, but not by a whole lot, and they're gonna get a lot of puck going their way. They're not a very good like statistical team either, but I just feel like they have more of the energy that's needed to win and make an upset in the playoffs. Finally, in the West, Vancouver and Calgary. Vancouver in 4 games. I'm calling it a clean sweep. Calgary's just they're a very lucky team. Calgary has like a ridiculous amount of comebacks. They won like a lot of their overtime games, and they're severely lucky. Like they got a very like high amount of things to go their way, except for of course losing their best defenseman and team captain to injury as well, which I don't think helps out in the playoffs at all. They're a good team. They're not really a good team. They were an okay team in the regular season to watch, and it's cool to see so many Canadian teams in the playoffs. However, I don't think this is going to be a success story for Calgary getting back up. Sorry, fans of Calgary, but I have your team getting swept by Vancouver. All right, we're moving on to the Eastern Conference. Now, some of my picks in this conference might be a little controversial. Well, my reasonings behind it, more or less, might be a little controversial, but nonetheless. So I have, first of all, in Montreal versus Ottawa, I have Ottawa winning. Ottawa, it's a very interesting matchup because Ottawa is the hottest team in the NHL. They played the best over the last course of the regular season. However, the Canadians have the best player in the NHL this season, in Carey Price, who's probably going to win the MVP. It's going to probably be him or Alexander Ovechkin. And like the way I see things going down, because it was probably maybe Tavares, but Ovechkin was probably the most meaningful of the top scorers in the NHL. It was very close here, considering Jamie Benn won the Art Ross and he was on a team that did not make the playoffs, which was a very strange situation. But it's going to be this is a really strange kind of matchup because it's not one that's really it is literally the only matchup like in this entire thing where they favorite because of the circumstances. Montreal has they have one of the best teams in the NHL. I believe they are second most points after New York. I believe. Yeah, they have more points than St. Louis and Anaheim in the West. So they're the second best team in the NHL points wise, and it's hard. Yeah, but I'm saying Ottawa's going to edge it out again. They've been playing way better lately, and I feel like their hot streak is sustainable considering how they ended the regular season. Maintain it now. I don't think they can maintain it very far. They'll probably only take them into the second round, but nonetheless. We'll move on to Tampa Bay and Detroit. I have Tampa Bay easily taking this. Detroit stumbled into the playoffs. This is a theme in the Eastern Conference too. Detroit kind of stumbled into the playoffs at the end of the year. They at one point, but I think that overall, Detroit's playoff streak was extended. However, I don't think it would be extended much further. They're really it's very visible that they are a team that is not in much playoff shape anymore. I think Tampa Bay is going to handle them in 4 games again. Another sweep. I'm predicting 2 sweeps in the playoffs. Vancouver and Calgary, and then Tampa Bay and Detroit. So I'm predicting those as sweeps this season in the playoffs. Detroit's played way too bad lately to really justify giving them playoff. You know what? Okay. I won't make it a sweep. I'll make it 4-1. How about that? Detroit wins 1 game in the Joe. And that's it. All right, New York and Pittsburgh. Okay, this is one where I'm predicting a sweep again because New York is literally better in every single way than Pittsburgh is. Pittsburgh played so horrible at the end of the year. They were like 3-14 at the end of their 4-14 in their last 20 games or something like that. It was just not a good end of the season after they were in not the top division, not the top position in the Met. But number 2, they were consistently in number 2 for most of the year. It was them and New York, Ranger or Islanders, that would kind of go back and forth between first and second before the Rangers just absolutely caught fire. um, and became the best team in the NHL this season. But yeah, Pittsburgh, another. It's not a good year for them, and I just don't think that. I think every year since their Stanley Cup's been a waste. Like they've not done anything, and they've just been constantly like, they're gonna suck at the playoffs. It's just like an assumption. It's just something that people like. All it's guaranteed to happen, and usually it does. You know, people won't guarantee something um, if it's not, like very highly probable, like over 90% usually, which this is. And I think that I don't see a way that Pittsburgh wins this series. Every other series, I see a way that either team could kind of win, but I don't think that Pittsburgh can beat New York in one game, in 7 games even. Anyway, the final series, my favorite team, the Washington Capitals and the New York Islanders. Now, I'm picking Washington not for biased reasons, but because New York is one of those teams that just does not look set up for the playoffs on paper. They do not have a very good defense. After their top like 2 or 3 defensemen, it really falls off. They don't have a lot of physical players. They do have Matt Martin, who's usually one of the NHL hits leaders, but like out of their top players, they don't really have a lot of big physical players. Like John Tavares is not going to lay body check. Kyle Okpozo's a big guy, but like Anders Lee, Franz Nielsen, Ryan Strome, these are offensive players. They're not big physical gritty defensive players in like anyway. So I don't picture this really working out for the Islanders in the playoffs. They can do stuff, like they can probably win a game or two. I have it going 6 games, but I just don't feel like the Islanders are a very good offensive team or a defensive team. And you're going to see the same problem that you saw a couple years ago when they were in the playoffs, where the defense is just not going to be good enough and they're going to give up way too many goals. Washington is, I believe, top 5 in both goal scoring or top 10 in both goal scoring and goal prevention. So they're a very weird team to have the record they do. They should have probably been like a couple wins better. Like I feel Washington at this point is kind of on the same level as Nashville. Like in terms of like the way they play, they prevent a lot of goals. However, they have a lot of top end production from their players, and then a little bit of depth scoring. But mostly their name of their game is defense and physicality, and that's a pretty good team comparison, I think, Nashville and Washington. And Nashville was one of the best teams in the NHL this year for most of the year until they kind of were falling off at the end. But all right, anyway, going back to my Nashville-Chicago prediction. I'm still going to pick Nashville in 6 games. I've thought about it more. I don't think Chicago's got enough. So, anyway, we'll quickly recap everything that I picked. So I have St. Louis over Minnesota in 7, Nashville over Chicago in 6, Anaheim over Winnipeg in 7, Vancouver over Calgary in 4, Ottawa over Montreal in 7, Tampa Bay over Detroit in 5, New York over Pittsburgh in 4, and Washington over New York in 6. So let me know what you think down below. I'm not saying my opinion's right, and I would like to just start discussion. So if you have your opinions on the playoffs or want to start like a playoff tree or something, go right ahead, and I will just comment right back to you. I want to get a little discussion going. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Peace. Oh, and expect the Cleveland Indians franchise introduction video later today, as the OSFM rosters are expected to drop this afternoon. So later, guys. Peace.